Okay, hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're talking about Euphoria, Season 2, Episode 3, another chaotic episode, and things took a dark turn quite quickly. And I think for a lot of these characters, old habits are going to die hard. So the episode starts off with some much needed backstory on Cal, specifically Cal and his best friend Derek. So it seems like Derek was his first love, the first person he was vulnerable with. This is the image I got. They were comfortable, they were best friends, they did everything together. Whatever Derek did, Cal did too. And I thought it was interesting because Cal is such an alpha male, you know, like we can't really imagine him being a follower. And here he is, like literally following in Derek's footsteps. We also get glimpses into his relationship with his father. So based on what little we saw of his father, he seemed like a very stern, strict man. And that's pretty much exactly what Cal became. And also in this flashback, we're introduced to Marcia. And it's crazy because they had such chemistry when they first met. And now I look at the two of them and they don't look like they have any chemistry. Marcia, in comparison to how she was in high school to how she is now, she looks like a miserable housewife, you know, like just drinking wine. There doesn't appear to be any chemistry between her and her husband. And also watching Cal with Marcia, this is kind of how his need for sex got triggered, right? Because in the beginning, he wasn't that sexual, and then they were like rabbits, right? Like every day, all day, you know, doing it all the time. There's nothing Cal wouldn't do. So it seems like, you know, Marcia kind of unlocked something in him. And again, watching the two of them, how they met and how they are now, like, I mean, time really, I mean, things have really changed. And it seems like watching these flashbacks, the vibe I got was, you know, Cal was very into his best friend Derek, right? He was always looking at him. He always wanted to be around him. He was always like his eye was always on him. And just before they graduate from high school, Derek insists that they hang out one last time. So it seems like after high school, Cal was on his way to Duke and Derek was going to a state college and they were going to part ways, and I guess that was it. But Derek insisted they hang out one last time, and he's the one who picked the location. And I thought it was interesting that it was Derek because I didn't get any vibes from Derek, you know, until we got to this club. And this whole sort of scene of them dancing together to the song like Never Tear Us Apart was so well choreographed. Like the music this episode, the camera. Like I like the camera work in this show because it adds to the tension. You know, it's not just, the camera isn't just there to follow characters around, it's there to kind of mirror the tension that's on screen. And in this club, you know, you kind of see that they have mutual affection for each other. So Cal has just as much affection for Derek as Derek has for him. And he goes from having the best night of his life to the worst morning of his life, right? So he wakes up to Marcia's call telling him that she's pregnant with his baby. And when you compare Nate and Cal at that age, Nate, last episode, he was so excited at the prospect of having a baby. You know, he was smiling, he was teary-eyed. Cal was horrified. You know, Cal is now trapped, right? Like he was crying, but not tears of joy at the idea of being stuck in this town. Clearly he didn't want these children. And so this kind of started the rest of his life. And Cal's flashback was much needed because you kind of get a glimpse into, you know, this guy, he's put on such a facade, and this facade is breaking, you know, just because it doesn't represent him at all. And it's only a matter of time. So before I talk about the episode, it's interesting, it's good to note that, you know, all these characters are so interwoven with one another that if one person messes up, it can affect like half the community. And you see that with Rue this episode. So I want to start with Rue because she was the most fascinating for me. Like things took a dark turn with her. And watching Rue, I mean, you know, this is going to escalate. And I can't help but think about that first episode where Fez took responsibility for her. Because if you recall, when he first met Lori, this drug dealer that he was trying to, you know, create a relationship with, she asked him, like, you trust her? Like, she's a drug addict? And he said, yes, I trust her. She's my family. And I think Rue, you know, she went from being like the neighborhood friendly drug addict to really putting herself in a position that's not just going to affect her, but like everybody else around her. And so she's feeling confident. She's feeling great. And now she has the perfect she has the best of both worlds. She has Jules and she has Elliot. You know, on one hand, she can do drugs with Elliot, and on the other hand, she has Jules. And this whole friendship triangle, you know, I mentioned this in the last episode, but Jules' expectations for Rue, I mean, they will not be met for a lot of reasons. And whether or not Jules sees it now, because they're not compatible. You know, like sexually, they're not compatible. There's something missing, and what's missing is Rue's first love will always be drugs. And this is something that I think Elliot sees because he knows she's using drugs, but Jules might not want to see. And so in an attempt to kind of, you know, build friendship, Jules, Elliot, they kind of have this weird interrogation scene. And watching this interrogation scene, it was really funny because I think Elliot is a good character. He adds much needed life on screen, you know, like he's very sarcastic, he's very, I don't know, he has some energy, which I appreciate. And all of the questions that Jules was asking him, like, we forget that Jules, you know, appearances can be deceiving. With Rue, she looks like a mess and she is a mess. You know, like just what you see is what you get. And as Elliot is talking to Jules, like, we forget that Jules was going to motel rooms, doing all kinds of stuff with all these dudes, and she has problems as well, but the difference is she doesn't show her problems, right? Which is why you can't really judge a book by its cover. And Elliot is like, both of y'all are messed up. Why are you interrogating me? You have no right, you know. And Jules suspects that there's something that Elliot is not being honest with. And when and how she finds out that they've been doing drugs together, we'll see. But it doesn't look like Elliot is going to snitch anytime soon. So they kind of form this pact and they play truth or dare. And watching them play truth or dare, like, this seems very counter to Jules' personality. Like, she's not this person to be loitering in hallways and playing truth or dare. And, you know, it was really funny. Like, I enjoyed the scene. Like, it was fun. But I wonder if Jules is taking Rue back as a kind of like, I don't care anymore. You know, she kind of wants to be down. She wants to know what's so interesting, you know, like, because again, this is so like, it's such a waste of her time. Like, she's such an artistic person. She's very goal oriented, and watching her hang out with Rue and Elliot, I'm not really sure is the best thing. And again, she's giving her all to Rue, but she doesn't know that Rue is so deep in her drug addiction. Like, you guys let me know if I'm misinterpreting, but it seems Rue is doing a very good job of covering up. And, you know, the way she justifies her drug addiction, she's like, you know, drugs allows me to stay in the good moments. You know, it allows me to be happy and present, and, you know, I don't have to lose these good moments. And, you know, watching her do drugs in her room, and again, she's put on such a great facade that it's totally blinded people to how bad things really are. And you see this with the sequence between Rue and her sister. And this whole thing between Rue and her sister is interesting because she kind of narrates, I'm not sure what this is foreshadowing, but, you know, she kind of goes off about TV and how, although we're all rooting for her to get better, like, there's no hope, you know, like, if we're looking for Rue as a symbol of hope, as a symbol of perseverance, like, this ain't it. And I'm not sure what that's foreshadowing, but the way things are going, things are gonna get much worse for Rue before they get better. And so she kind of lays out her groundwork of how to get away with being a drug addict. And this was important because it kind of outlines why no one else is seeing how bad this is. So the first step is to lay the groundwork. And the amount of time and dedication she's putting into hiding and enabling her drug addiction is so deep. And you would not think that she why would anybody go through these lengths, right? So the groundwork involves triggering a fight with her sister in terms of like bringing up the idea of doing drugs, and the drug in question being weed. So she kind of is chilling with her sister, and she kind of mentions the fact that she might start doing weed as a way of curing her anxiety, and her sister's like, you're selfish, you know, pisses her off. And again, her sister Gia, she's seen the worst, and Rue's addiction, you know, has affected her, because Rue is like a sick child that no one feels bad for, because a lot of people don't understand, you know, the amount of time Rue has taken from the family, right? Like all the energy, all the resources, everything has gone into helping Rue, and Gia has also become a resource for helping Rue, right? Like everything is kind of geared at the person that has the issue. So her needs and her wants and desires, so Gia is in the back burner. So listening to her sister talk about drugs, you know, like this is too much. The whole family's burned out, you know. And after she lays the groundwork, she gaslights. And the way she gaslights, I mean, my God, she's like, okay, you tell mom I'm suicidal. Like she's really kind of, Rue is saying some things that are so serious. But like when you have the knowledge that this is all just to enable her drug addiction, you realize like the only person taking Rue seriously is Rue, you know, because again, like if you're Gia or if you're anybody else watching without this, you know, narration, you're like, oh my God, you know, maybe Rue does need help. And again, it's the manipulation, it's, you know, the pressure of living with that type of person. Like you don't see it coming. And so Rue gets away with murder because she's already foreseeing the fact that eventually she's going to get caught, and she's at the point where she's laying the groundwork for when she does get caught. So it's better they assume she's doing weed than she's doing something else. And like she's so confident in her manipulation that she gets a bright idea. You know, why don't I do drugs for free? Like if I was really smart, why don't I do drugs for free? And she comes up with this crazy business plan, and of course all of it in an attempt to just no longer have to pay for drugs or no longer have to ask for drugs. Like this has nothing to do with making money. She just wants free drugs. So she goes over to Fez, and Fez automatically says no. And I think with Fez, like he underestimates her, and so does a lot of people, right? Like he just shuts her down right away, assuming that he's the only person that she can go to, totally forgetting about the fact that he took her to see this Lori person. So Rue is trying to lay out her plan, and Fez is like, nah, I don't like how the plan started. You're a drug addict. You can't be trusted. You need to get out of my house right now, you know? And Rue is pissed, right? And she tells Elliot her plan, and Elliot is like, that's a genius. But again, the only person who knows Rue's mind or has seen the worst of it is Fez. So, and again, Rue's motivation is to do free drugs. It has nothing to do with making money or anything like that. And so she decides to bypass the red tape and go to Lori herself. And this conversation with Lori is mad, right? Because I feel the only reason Lori let her in is because of Fez, right? Because Fez was like, I trust her. She's my family, indicating that if anything went wrong, Fez is responsible. And so Rue goes in, lays out her evil plan. And her plan, in theory, is good. You know, use a bunch of really, you know, high GPA students to sell drugs. And if they snitch, then their whole lives will be exposed and their futures will be destroyed. The idea being people who, you know, get in, who really study, and these sort of A++ students have less in it, they're less likely to snitch because they don't want to ruin their lives. And on top of that, they need some money to go to college. So Lori's listening to this plan like, girl, you're a genius. You really thought about this. And although Lori is clearly aware that she's a drug addict, she has no reason to distrust her. And right off the bat, she's like, I'll give you $50K suitcase. And Rue is like, nah, let's reduce it, you know, $10K. And the fact that she reduced it, again, suggests that, like, she just wants drugs, you know. And just before she leaves, Lori says, listen, if you mess this up, like, your payment is due at the end of the month. If you mess this up, I will sell you to some really sick people. Like, basically telling her, listen, I don't know what you think this is, but there are no second chances with this. And clearly that doesn't deter Rue. And that whole scene of her taking the suitcase and just biking along, like, I was waiting for the suitcase to burst open. Like, I was I was so tripped out. Like, she's literally carrying a suitcase full of drugs around town, and she's wearing a suit, and she's clearly high out of her mind. Like, I don't know, I thought that shit was hilarious. Like, I was like, what are you doing? And like, the whole time I'm expecting like something to hit the suitcase or something to happen to mess it up right away. And she goes straight to AA. And this whole scene of her at AA, and she's sitting there and they're doing these close-ups of her face, like, she's clearly gone, you know, like, she's high, like, she's fidgety, like, she's not there. And Allie's looking at her, he's looking at the suitcase, like, what is happening here? And why she comes to AA as a way to just, it's routine, right? Like, she's kind of convinced people that she has a routine and she's sticking to it, even though she's just going through the motions. Like, the whole thing is hollow. And just before she leaves, Allie kind of intervenes. And this scene with Allie, I think, really kind of, it was so dark because I think Allie, he sees her as a daughter, and therefore he kind of looks past the bad, right? Like, he sees like she's somebody that has the potential to get better. But again, like, because he has such a protective sort of feeling over her, he's underestimating how bad it is. So he kind of stops her and he says, the $64,000 question, like, what's in the suitcase? And she's like, mind your business. Like, she can't wait to get home and open she can't wait to get home and open the suitcase. And what she says to him, you know, like, no one's looking at you to be a parent. And he starts yelling at her. Like, Rue was not afraid. She didn't care. She has no fear. Now, what I thought was interesting is that she didn't even pretend to entertain Allie, right? She didn't even pretend to, like, say sorry or cover it up. She was just like, listen, like, do what you're gonna do, but I don't think it's gonna be much. And Allie was shook, you know. He was like, he was like, he couldn't believe it, and he left because a lot of what she said triggered him as well, right? Because he opened up to her, he told her so many things, and she just threw it in his face like it was nothing. And maybe in that moment he realized, like, damn, did I underestimate this girl? And this scene, like, the contrast between Rue and Jules, you know? Like, Rue, when she opened up that suitcase and she saw those drugs and she takes it and she just, that's when you realize, like, this is the thing she loves. Like, this is what makes her happy. This is what, like, she was so excited, you know. And meanwhile, Jules and Elliot are having a conversation. They're bonding. They're getting to know each other. But for Rue, like, human connection will never do it as much as drugs. And Jules and Elliot are interesting because Elliot, you know, I think Jules has a crush on Elliot. And she's kind of probing him, you know, like, do you like Rue? Do you like this and that? And he's complimenting her back. And again, like, Jules has had a very interesting relationship with men, and she claims that she's done with men, but I don't think that's true at all. But yeah, just the contrast between, like, how far Rue is, right? Like, these relationships for Rue is just, again, a way to enable her drug addiction, but they don't actually bring her any peace or anything. And so now she has a suitcase full of drugs. How that's going to turn out, probably not well for anyone involved or anyone who's within a degree of separation from her, but we'll see. So watching Rue, you know, go through this phase, like, she's flying way too close to the sun, and so is Nate, right? Like, their stories are kind of paralleled in similar ways because, you know, Rue is to the point where she's putting herself in danger and she's putting other people in danger, and Nate is, you know, he thinks he has power, but it's not until the end of this episode that, you know, the power is going to shift. So this whole love triangle between Nate, Maddy, and Cassie now involves Cal. And there's so much tension here, like, eventually it's going to explode. So starting with Cassie, like, Cassie's obsessed with Nate. She can't stop thinking about him. This whole, like, 4 a.m. ritual where she wakes up in the morning and she, you know, is scrubbing herself and getting ready just to objectify herself, and in hopes that he sees her is really crazy, because you realize, like, her obsession, until she gets the reaction that she wants, she won't stop. So it has nothing to do with Nate. It's more like she needs that external validation to move on. And eventually she gets what she wants. They meet up every Friday night, and their attraction to one another, it makes sense because they bring out each other's sort of like true colors, you could say. Because Nate has this desire to be worshipped, to be bowed down, and Cassie has this desire to be wanted and to be looked at like this. She has this desire to be obsessed over, and so together they're just the worst two people to have ever met. And with that is this tension between Cassie and Maddy. So Maddy is trying to block out Nate, out of sight, out of mind. And Cassie, she has the audacity to give her advice, being like, you deserve someone who worships the ground you walk on, who loves you, who all this stuff. Meanwhile, she's like doing the opposite. But, at the end of the episode, when Nate goes over to Maddy's house, this is so dangerous because it doesn't actually benefit Nate for the two girls to find out about each other because, Maddy has that disc. So Maddy, at this point, has a lot of love for him. But once that love turns to hate, all hell will break loose, right? And I think her wrath will be directed more at Nate than at Cassie. And I think maybe Nate underestimates Maddy's sort of, where that anger will be directed, because they've had so many ups and downs that you wonder how many more ups and downs they can have. But, at the end of the episode, he comes over with flowers to see her. And again, he's trying to appease her. He's trying to get her to do his bidding. And Maddy is not as malleable as Cassie. Like, she's not as, Maddy has this idea of how her life should be. And Nate is kind of the way of getting it. Whereas Cassie, she just kind of throws herself into it. It's more emotional. So how this is going to end, I don't know. But as soon as Maddy tells Cassie that they were together, I don't know. I'm not sure how much longer Cassie can keep this secret. She's kind of ready to burst. Like that whole scene of her like exploding in the bathroom, telling everybody they're in love, this and that. I feel like that's only a matter of time before she literally explodes. But we'll see. So the other person who's about to explode is Cal. And watching Cal this episode, he's totally passive. Nate is in his house banging his mistress. And, Cal is sitting there like there's nothing he can do because Nate has this thing dangling over him. And, Cal is just like, he's thinking about suicide. If this ever gets out, he literally cannot show his face anywhere ever. And so he finally decides to do something about it. So he pulls up to Fez's house. And I think Ash is my new favorite character. And he kind of goes in. He's desperate. He's like, I need this disc. And this whole scene between Fez, Ash, and Cal, again, I thought someone was gonna die. So Cal, they sit him down, and again, he's trying to pull all these threats, but it's obvious that he has nothing, and Ash sees through that. He's like just beating him up, and rightfully so, because Cal has been walking around town saying, oh, chief of police, I can open an investigation anytime I want, but dude, the only person that we need to open an investigation on is you. And Cal is under the assumption that Fez knows everything, right? And he's there to just get the disc back. And Fez is shocked. He's like, you had sex with who? What happened? Disc? You videotaped it? What kind of weird, he had no idea. And Cal is really confused because he basically confessed a bunch of things that he shouldn't have confessed to. And Fez is really confused. And at the end of that conversation, Fez was like, listen, we'll let you go if you promise to keep your son out of our lives. And Cal was like, oh, I promise. So it seems like Cal got his groove back. He leaves that apartment totally being, destroyed, but with, I think, a newfound sense of purpose. But that whole scene with Cal and Fez, the fact that Fez now knows about, because, you have to think, he exposed himself in a big way because it's, it doesn't take much for Fez to kind of connect the dots, or with Ash to connect the dots and be like, yo, if you videotaped her, what else have you been doing? This is going to snowball. So Cal totally exposed himself. he is about to, I don't know what he's going to do to Nate, but he's about to get his power back. And that was a fantastic episode. So before I end it, I just want to touch on Kat, Ethan, and Lexi. So Lexi is having a play, and she's always been very passive. And so she's in the background, she's writing. She seems to be like coming to life a bit. And this whole bit about like her fake show, This Is Life, that was so funny. And Rue was sitting there like, that was just, the whole idea being that we focus on the main characters and we never focus on the sidekicks. And these are the people we need to keep our eye on, right? Like the people that we think are, we just kind of assume things about them. Like they're not as interesting as the main characters, but they got things going on, they got ideas. And Lexi's about to show her ideas. And I thought it was interesting that Ethan auditioned for the play because I think he has a crush on Lexi. And Kat was like, okay, like she was like kind of, I don't know if she was annoyed, but she was just like, you auditioned for what? So I don't know how that's gonna unfold, but overall that was a good episode. I think the season is like looking good, like everything is happening fast. Rue, I think, is one decision away from being human trafficked, but we'll see. Until next time.